Welcome to The Explainer. Sometimes the biggest international fights start in the strangest places. Today, we're diving deep into a wild story where, I'm not kidding, the city dump becomes a geopolitical battleground. Let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with a number. Just look at that. Over 3.4 million tons. It's a massive number, and it's the absolute heart of a cross-border conflict that's been simmering for years and is now just about boiling over.
So what is that number? Well, that's how much trash flows from Ontario, Canada, into Michigan's landfills. And get this, that's not a one-time thing. That's every single year. It's a literal river of refuse flowing south across the border.
And to put that into perspective for you, trash from Ontario alone makes up almost 15% of all the waste that gets dumped in Michigan. So this isn't some small side deal, it's a huge fundamental part of the waste management system for both places.
So the big question is, why? Why on earth is this happening on such an incredible scale? Well, as it so often does, the answer really just boils down to money. Cold, hard cash. It's really a story of two completely different situations. Over in Ontario, Canada's biggest province, they're facing what's called a capacity cliff. They're literally running out of room for their own garbage. But right next door, you've got Michigan, which basically became the cheapest dump in the entire region, thanks to a state surcharge of just 36 cents per ton. It's an unbelievable bargain.
And this right here is Michigan's proposed fix. Governor Gretchen Whitmer is trying to jack that fee up from 36 cents all the way to $5 a ton. That's a nearly 1,300% hike. The whole point is to just kill the economic incentive that created this whole mess to begin with.
Now, you might be thinking, hold on, why don't they just ban Canadian trash? Well, it's not that simple. There's this huge legal catch. Under U.S. law and the big North American trade deal, waste is legally considered an article of commerce. It's a protected good, just like cars or lumber. That means Michigan can't just put up a sign that says, no Canadian trash allowed. They have to raise the price for everybody.
But this fight over garbage didn't stay local for long. Oh no. By 2026, it blew up into a massive international trade dispute, pulling in a U.S. president and a Canadian premier, who started making some seriously big power plays.
Just look at how fast things escalated. On February 20th, the Supreme Court knocks down President Trump's emergency tariffs. But does he stop? Nope. Just 4 days later, his team pivots and slaps a new 10% global surcharge on imports using a different law. And then, not even 2 weeks after that, bam! Ontario hits back and they go for a major pressure point: electricity. Immediately after that Supreme Court ruling, Ontario's Premier, Doug Ford, saw a chance to pounce. He came right out and said he thought the U.S. president was getting boxed in, that his options were disappearing. But when the U.S. sidestepped the court and hit them with new tariffs anyway, Ford made it crystal clear he was ready for a fight. His government threatened a 25% surcharge on electricity exports, and he said he'd do it with a smile, aiming that economic weapon right at the U.S. states that were supporting the tariffs. And this is where it all comes together. This whole messy fight over garbage and electricity is now on a direct collision course with the massive trade agreement that governs pretty much all of North America. Okay, so here's the key detail you have to understand. The trade deal, the USMCA, has this thing called a sunset review. It basically means that in July of 2026, the whole deal comes up for renewal. What was supposed to be a pretty routine check-in has now turned into this incredibly high-stakes negotiation where everything, including the flow of garbage, is on the table.
This table does a great job of showing all the forces pulling in different directions, and it points to this really fascinating paradox, right? Because of all the trade friction and tariffs, the actual amount of trash being imported is starting to go down. But, and this is the crazy part, the political and economic cost of dealing with it is just going through the roof for everyone.
So where does this all go from here? What are the potential outcomes in this high-stakes endgame for the U.S.-Canada border? There are really three paths this could take. Path 1, a simple renewal. The deal gets extended, and the trash probably just keeps on flowing. Path 2, non-renewal. That would kick off a 10-year countdown to the end of the deal, creating total chaos and uncertainty. Or Path 3, a full-blown renegotiation, where they could add totally new rules for environmental services that would change the garbage game completely. And this slide right here perfectly explains the interdependence trap that has both sides completely stuck. Get this, Michigan actually relies on the money it makes from those trash fees, even the super cheap ones, to fund crucial environmental programs, like cleaning up thousands of contaminated sites.
At the exact same time, Ontario needs Michigan's cheap land so it can put off the politically toxic job of building new landfills at home. They're locked together.
But here's the bottom line. No matter what happens with the trade deal, no matter who wins the tariff fight, one thing is absolutely certain for everyone involved. The old way of doing things is done. It's over. The era of just shipping your problems across the border for cheap is dead.
And all of this leaves us with one last big question to think about. When something as basic as garbage gets turned into a weapon in a trade war, what's the first thing that really gets thrown away? Is it economic cooperation? Is it environmental protection? Or maybe it's just the very idea that you can have a stable, friendly border.